Sidney Marie, the big new name in the lineup. Marie, the third fastest man in history over both 1,500 and 5,000 metres. Born in South Africa, but became a United States citizen in 1984. A brilliant athlete, but unpredictable. Dave Clark, Grand Prix champion in 1985, is joint leader this time. He finished third in Oxford, 8th in York. Can he successfully defend his title? Dave's a school teacher, by the way, and he comes from Hampton in Middlesex. And here's Carl Thackeray, a Yorkshireman from the Hallamshire Club in Sheffield, a consistent runner in the series. He's placed 5th and 6th in the previous races, and Thackeray is on exactly the same number of points as Clark. So the start line officials have pushed the men back behind that white line, and the 95 men in this final event in the series rather anticipate the starting signal. Certainly a rare event, a false start in a race of this distance. So they're pushed back behind the line, and this time it's a clean start, and I can understand the anxiety because it's a very short stretch to the first really tight left-hand bend, and obviously nobody wants to get buried in the pack at this stage of the race. And across the front line are all the big names, and wearing the yellow number 1 on the right-hand side of the picture, also in a yellow vest, is Dave Clark, the joint Grand Prix leader, along with Carl Thackeray, who in fact is already, even at this early stage, running right alongside him. Sidney Marie in the centre of the picture there too, in the white top and black shorts. And this race full of very, very good club runners, as well as the international standard athletes, and lots of prizes too in the team competition. Remember, cash prizes for the first 10 finishers in the race and the first 3 in the overall Grand Prix standings. Of course, starting in King Edward the 7th Avenue, moving into the shadow of Cardiff Castle along Museum Avenue. Flat, and it's fast, and it's ideal for these runners who really do enjoy running here in Cardiff. Sidney Marie already prominent in the centre of the pack. Marie making his first appearance in a road race in Britain. What exactly does he think of the course?
It's very different. I have not run a long distance of this length on a course this tight. It will be exciting. I hear all the previous races have been very exciting. I hope to do well. I hear the crowd is with you all the time, and most of the opposition stays with you until the end, so it should be something different.
Certainly something different for this man, who wouldn't really expect at this stage, I'm sure, to be out in front of such a quality field. Number 121 is Jim Orr of Cambuslang Harriers, the Scottish club, Orr, who finished 40th in the Oxford event. And the rest of the pack cagily allowing him to run away from them at this early stage, secure in the knowledge, I'm sure, and perhaps even Jim Orr would admit this, that they'll catch up with him fairly soon. The real race going on just behind him. And number 52 there in the grey top is one of the overseas competitors, Henrik Albarn of Denmark. In the yellow vest in the centre of the picture is Chris Dagnall of Liverpool Harriers, wearing number 83, I think it is. Liverpool Harriers standing 8th in the top 10 standings for that big team award, but I gather that Dagnall is their only runner here today, so they obviously will fall out of contention for a prize. Sidney Marie quite happy at this early stage of the race to let the others dictate the pace.
And they've just passed through the first kilometre in quite a sensible pace, 2 minutes 46 seconds.
It'll take some time with such a large field for the runners to really sort themselves out behind Jim Orr. And an enthusiastic crowd lining the streets of Cardiff, which also, incidentally, today is the scene of the end of the 7th stage of the milk race. So a real sporting day out for the Cardiff public. And as Orr continues to lead, with the Danes just behind him, the big names in the field are really at this early stage, Steve, watching each other.
Yes, I think it's quite a nice course for that, actually. I mean, it's very wide. There's no hairpin bends for them to sort of negotiate and get into trouble. So I think they're just going to settle down into a very relaxed rhythm. There's the course, you can see it. It's a lovely oblong with straights of, I suppose, about 300 metres. So they can settle into a nice rhythm and just tick along. And I think that's what they're going to do. They'll tick along for 2 or 3 laps and then sort themselves out over the latter stages.
We have a new leader, at least I think he's overtaken Jim Orr. This is Carl Thackeray, the leader in the Grand Prix, along with Clark. But just in front of him was number 64, Jimmy Ashworth of Bingley. Thackeray, who knows that today is the day for him to really break through and win what would be the biggest prize he's carried off so far. But Ashworth is indeed the leader. Bingley, one of the leading road running clubs in the land, and Ashworth in the blue and white hoops in front.
Ashworth, of course, is a leading marathon runner. He's run about 2:11 personal best. And there are a number of marathon runners in the race. I saw Hugh Jones in about 15th place, also prominent. And, of course, he will be representing us later on in the big races this season.
Steve, I wonder what the philosophy is, really, the difference between running this kind of distance or similar distances on the track and running them on the road.
I think it's totally different, actually. A lot of runners will say that running on the road, even over a distance like 10k, is so much more simpler than running on the track. I think the monotony comes into running on the track. You've got a metronome effect of 26 laps, and it's almost told you every time you go through, so you get this sort of drip torture, as it were, of the lap markers going through. On the road, the scenery varies. The competition is all around you all the time. They're not behind you or just in front of you. As you see there, they're drifting across the road, so you've got 5 or 6 people deep. And I think the concentration is maintained.
And they've just passed the 2 kilometre point, and slightly surprisingly, considering that Ashworth has now built up a bit of a lead, that was a much slower second kilometre, 5:40 at 2k, so after a 2:46 opener, then a 2:54.
Well, I think what's happening actually, Peter, is that they're probably, all of them in that pack are very, very cautious men. Anybody that makes a move too early can die and be swallowed up by the pack, and when you're considering that points in this particular race are all important for a lot of those guys, they're not going to take that type of gamble, so no one is going to really try and stretch it out from this stage of the race.
Just picking out some of the numbers then in that group following Ashworth. You can see Sidney Marie there, number 30 in the white top and black shorts. Number 83 in the yellow vest is Chris Dagnall of Liverpool Harriers. Carl Thackeray wearing the red of Hallamshire, the Sheffield club that Seb Coe used to run for before he moved south to Haringey. And Ashworth continuing to set a good pace, has a best marathon time of 2 hours, 11 minutes. Ran in the London Marathon this year and was hoping to turn in a good performance in that race to convince the Commonwealth Games selectors that he was deserving of a place in the England team. But sadly, at the 22-mile stage in London, he dropped out of the race, and that obviously has ruined his hopes of Commonwealth Games selection. Carl Harrison in the centre of that pack there in the maroon shorts. There he is. Such a consistent runner, Carl Harrison, the runner's runner he's known as, and Dave Clark and Sidney Marie just behind him. Carl Harrison, who won his first big track title over 10,000 metres a week ago in Cwmbran, running in something like 5th or 6th place, but a very tightly bunched pack, as you can see, and they're now gradually drawing the leader Ashworth back towards them. Certainly, Steve, at this stage of the race, it's cagey, it's close, and nobody really showing their hand.
No, I think the pace actually, Peter will probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the pace is slightly slower than it was at Oxford. As I said before, that's, I think, understandable under the circumstances. But it's interesting to see that all the top boys that we're looking for are in that top bunch. And, of course, it's got people like Tim Hutchins there as well, who at the moment is running exceptionally well. Yesterday he ran a 3:43, 1500 metres for his club, so he's in good form and someone to watch out to battle with even the top boys that we've seen before. There's Tony Marasorov, by the way. He's up in the placings. He's 3rd at the moment in the Grand Prix, and he's hoping that he's going to get a big gap between him and the other guys, but we'll have to see in the latter part of the race.
And I just caught sight of former London Marathon winner Mike Grattan too in the leading pack. He's having a good run. But out in front still of this pack is the Liverpool Harrier Dagnall.
And they passed the 3 kilometre point in 8:36, so the pace still slowing, 2:56 last kilometre.
And I'm sure this moderate pace is helping to keep so many men in contention at this stage. And we wonder who will be the first of the big names to make a move and try and split this field. Everybody still in close contention in the top 50 or so. Sidney Marie running there on the left-hand side of the picture. Really one of the world's great athletes. Only Saeed Awita and Steve Cram have run faster than him over 1,500 metres. And only Awita and Dave Moorcroft have better times over 5,000 metres. He's very talented at a terrific range of distances. And one wonders just how sharp he is at this stage of the season to come and take on these men who've been running cross-country and roads for some weeks now. And I've just heard from further down the course that Simeon Keegan, the Kenyan, who it was hoped would make a big impact on this series, but who's run disappointingly in both the previous races in York and Oxford, has in fact pulled out. He evidently completed 2 laps and then pulled out of the race complaining of stomach cramp and is currently being treated at the first aid tent. But we're now looking at Tim Hutchings, who makes his first appearance of this series and therefore comes here fresher than most, and certainly sharper because he ran a very good 1,500 metres for his club Crawley yesterday in a British League match. Tim Hutchings in the centre then of that leading group, which still is between 10 and 15 men strong. 83 Chris Dagnall in the yellow vest. Then in the red vest is the joint Grand Prix leader Carl Thackeray wearing number 28. Carl Harrison is number 105 in the white top and the maroon shorts. Sidney Marie, number 30. Just behind him, Nigel Tyler of Havering in the light blue running strip. And also in the leading group is Peter Fleming, just behind Hutchings. And Nat Muir's headband too, just bobbing along in amongst the leaders, with Tony Milosorov and Dave Clark.
Yes, I think at the moment, Alan, they're sort of slowly, but only slowly, pulling away from the packs at the back of the field. They're still spread across, and the pace is not bad at the moment, but it's a lot slower than it was. They're coming up to the 4 kilometre mark at the moment. It'll be interesting to see. That's the halfway point. What sort of time they actually pass that in? At the moment, I think Dave Clark and the rest of them are all there.
Well, there we are, the time displayed there, 11 minutes 29.6 for 4 kilometres. And Steve, that's quite a lot slower than at Oxford. In your race, you went through in 11:13 at that point.
Yes, but I do think that we'll see probably a lot faster over the latter stages, Peter, especially if some of the guys like Tony Milosorov or Carl Thackeray decide that they've got to make a break in order to make sure that the point situation is secure before the last sprint. In fact, as I say that, actually, Tony Milosorov has decided that the pace is perhaps a little bit too slow for his sort of liking, and he's pushed the pace on.
Milosorov in the green and white hoops of Tipton, and there's another green and white vest in that leading pack. You probably just saw his name a moment ago, Paul Magna, who's just joined Tipton, one of our strongest road running clubs and winners of the recent National Road Relay. Paul Magna also in the top 12.
Well, Tipton's certainly making a determined bid here for the club overall title, and the leading club will earn $2,500, which is a very useful injection into club funds. So with Tony Milosorov leading the way, Tipton at the moment lying first in the team race, with Stretford in second place. Carl Harrison is their leading runner up amongst that top group, and then Bristol, Birchfield and Bingley also in contention for leading places.
Tony's face there is a picture of concentration, Alan. Actually, he knows what he's got to do. He's got to pull away from the guys that were behind him there. He's got to get a space of about 4 or 5 people between him and Carl Thackeray, the guy there in red, to take the overall placing in the Grand Prix. But as you see, Carl's responded to any move that Tony makes, and just behind him, Dave Clark is doing the same. So tactics are definitely playing a part in the race now.
Yes, Milosorov has to be 5 places in front of the current Grand Prix leaders in order to win the big prize. Milosorov, number 210 in the green and white Tipton hoops. Carl Thackeray running a comfortable race. Number 111, in fact, is the number being worn by Milosorov. But Carl Thackeray just behind him in the red vest, running a comfortable race, aware all the time of those around him, and in particular of the man on his left-hand side, Dave Clark. Milosorov, a consistent runner, a remarkable character who was once in fact advised to give up running because of a heart problem, but he's certainly proved some of the medical experts wrong by going on to enjoy a very good career. Milosorov, the leader. Thackeray is second. Clark is third. Peter Fleming, the young Bella Houston runner, in third place there in the dark-coloured top and the light shorts, blue top, wearing number, I believe it's 43, yes. He's in third place, certainly having a fine run, and Tim Hutchings just behind him. Carl Harrison in the white top, also following the leader Milosorov, and Nat Muir on the right-hand side of the picture there in the green shorts, still in contention at the 5 kilometre stage.
Yes, 14:19 for 5 kilometres, and certainly your point about Peter Fleming's justified, because that's very close to his own personal best at that distance, and he looks really set to make a breakthrough. We'll look out for him with interest in the Scottish Championships.
Fleming, who had a good run in Oxford when he finished 14th, and who ran for Scotland in the World Cross Country Championships in Neuchâtel earlier this year. That's Fleming, number 43, just behind the leaders Milosorov and Thackeray, who are now running shoulder to shoulder. Fourth is Tim Hutchings, who really has looked good throughout this race, and I think that's Craig Mockery now, who's moved through into fifth place from the Leicester Coritania Club in the white top and red shorts. Just behind Hutchings, who's fourth.
It's interesting, actually, Alan, watching the actual physical state of the runners. They've actually increased the pace considerably. You can see that they're dropping people all the time now. The rhythm of the legs is that much quicker. And there's Dave Clark, actually. He's found that injection of pace over the last lap there, quite tough. You can see the pain on his face. And Dave's now got to work very hard to catch that gap up on Carl Thackeray, the leader, to make sure that he's in with a fighting chance at the end of the overall Grand Prix position. And remember that the first prize is for $5,000, so these guys are really fighting for quite a considerable amount of money at the end.
And significantly, Thackeray really has pulled away over this circuit of the course. And it's a break that certainly has had the effect he would have wished, because Clark is now dropping off the pace being set by the first 5. And there's Sidney Marie, a man who took your world record for 1,500 metres briefly once, Steve.
I think he took it for about a week, actually, Alan. I couldn't find a race in between the time, so he had it a lot longer than I would have hoped. But Sidney's even suffering at this sort of pace. I don't know, Sidney's one of these guys that you can never really predict how he's going to run. One day he'll run absolutely appalling, and the next day he'll break a world record. So at the moment, obviously, it's one of his off days, and he's finding this particular pace that much harder than he probably would have wanted.
And a reminder of the position at this stage in the overall Grand Prix, that Thackeray and Clark are the joint leaders, so obviously whichever of those two finishes in front of the other, then he wins the major prize. But they both have to be careful also not to be overtaken by those closest to them in the standings, and Milosorov and Harrison are the next two on the list. So this fascinating race continues to unfold, and with this young man Peter Fleming really having one of the runs of his career to be up in this kind of company at this stage. Thackeray, the leader. Hutchings second. Fleming third. It's Mockery in fourth place now. And then some way back to fifth is Milosorov.
And there they're passing 6 kilometres in 17 minutes 6.9. So we've had this very decisive change in tempo in the race. After a couple of 2:55-56 laps, first Milosorov threw in a 2:49, and then led by Carl Thackeray, a 2:48 kilometre.
That's right. At the moment, I suppose they've got just over a mile to go, and you can see the determination in Carl at the moment. He's really pushing the pace, dropping almost people by the 100 metres, and there's the chasing bunch with Dave, whose job is getting harder by the second almost to try and catch that elusive gap up. It's a fairly determined effort from someone like Carl, because obviously he must be tired from the previous races, and to push the pace with almost a mile to go is a decisive break.
Thackeray leads then, but look at that ominously comfortable looking stride of Tim Hutchings just behind him. Hutchings, one of Britain's premier men over 5,000 metres on the track, fourth in the 1984 Olympic Games, and a man who on his day really is one of our leading runners, although he's had a couple of disappointments certainly in the last 12 months, particularly this year's World Cross Country Championships. But Hutchings has rested since then, has been training and competing abroad, and comes here fresh and able to mount this challenge to the rest of the field. But this is a brave and bold bid now by Thackeray to get away from Dave Clark and win that big prize. Hutchings looking as though he could pounce at any time and beat him as far as the race is concerned, but as far as the overall series is concerned, Thackeray now has put an awful lot of ground between him and his chief rival, Dave Clark.
As you say that, though, you see that at the back there, Dave is actually putting quite a bold effort to get back to the other two leaders here, but he must be at least 60 metres behind, and Carl, I think, is struggling. I mean, he's got nearly a lap to go, and he may find the pace telling considerably over the next lap. And Dave Clark, as you can see, must be at least 50 metres behind, but Dave does finish very, very strongly. I mean, I think he's more of a 10,000 metre man than the 5,000 metre man. So as the race goes on, someone like Dave will use his enormous strength to claw his way back to the leaders. But it's a fair gap he's got there, Alan, and I'm not sure whether he's going to catch it up.
So what a final act unfolding here, with Thackeray having bravely gone out and looking certainly in a degree of pain at the moment, with Hutchings just sitting on his shoulder, as I say, looking as though he could overtake him at any time. But Hutchings, remember, is making his first appearance of the series and cannot figure in the overall Grand Prix standings. The real race, as far as the major prize is concerned, is between Thackeray here in the red top with just a circuit to go, and Clark, who's some way back.
Well, just a kilometre to go, and these two are certainly running faster and faster all the time. That last kilometre, much the fastest of the race, with 2 minutes 43 seconds.
Just lapping a couple of runners there who were obliged to drop out. And there's the bell for Clark, so he's, what, something like 10 seconds, I would say, behind Thackeray. But you keep wondering when Thackeray is really going to pay the price for this very long, sustained run for home.
I think Carl's almost oblivious to the fact that Tim's there. He's not really worried about Tim, and to all intents and purposes, I don't think he's all that worried about losing the race. All he's making sure of, and he even checks over his shoulder there, is how far the other guy behind him, Dave Clark, is behind him, because he must be feeling very, very tired, Alan, and if you're going to die over the last stages of the race, you better make sure that the gap between you and the man you're worrying about is significant.
And here goes Hutchings now, and the effortless ease with which he brushed Thackeray aside suggests that Hutchings is in a position he's not going to relinquish. Tim Hutchings, the tall Sussex athlete, now 27 years old, who has just stretched away from Thackeray, and with Clark even further behind, Hutchings, you can bet now, is going to win this race. He's just posted his best time for almost 2 years over 5,000 metres in a big meeting in Seville, in which Steve Ovett also ran and won. And Hutchings looking now very, very easy indeed, and Thackeray cannot respond. But the real question is, can he respond to the diminishing gap now between him and Clark there in the yellow vest, who is just ahead of fourth place Carl Harrison. Hutchings has won the race, there's no doubt about that, but how can Clark claw his way back to Thackeray? He may have run out of time, but there's Clark now just turning the bend, and as you can see, that gap is getting smaller, and Thackeray is getting more and more tired as the finishing straight comes into sight. Hutchings looking as though he's hardly breaking sweat there, and a big gap between him and Thackeray, and Clark has got the bit between his teeth now, and the fact that Hutchings has left Thackeray so far behind will have damaged his morale and certainly won't add any spring to his step. And as Hutchings eases his way to the line for this very impressive performance by him, we wonder whether Thackeray can hold on. And remember, if Thackeray can finish in second place, or even indeed just finish ahead of Clark, then he has won the Grand Prix prize. But applause in the home stretch for Tim Hutchings, the national cross-country champion, who on his first appearance in the series wins the Cardiff City Centre race. And Thackeray has indeed held on, but it was mighty close, because Clark really made a tremendous bid to draw him back, but Thackeray hung on, and what a bold run by him. Clark in third place. There's Milosorov just crossing the line now. Harrison was fourth, Milosorov was fifth, and Craig Mockery in sixth place. Good run for him. But congratulations to Tim Hutchings, a very classy performance. And here is a man that'll be a medal contender in the big championships that lie ahead this year. Sidney Marie back in something like 12th place, I think. So a bit disappointed with his finish. And as the rest of the runners stream in with places in the team competition very much in mind, the crowd continues to applaud the winner, Tim Hutchings. And certainly, as far as the Grand Prix is concerned, congratulations to the two men who made such a bold fight of it. And there they are together, Dave Clark and Carl Thackeray. Well, let's have confirmation now of exactly how everything ended up.
Tim Hutchings today is decisive winner in 22 minutes 31 seconds from the top men over the 3 races. Carl Thackeray's second place today brought the Hallamshire Harrier, the Gaymers Old English Series, by 1 point from last year's winner Dave Clark, with Tony Milosorov in 3rd place. And the team result, a win for Tipton Harriers as they lead 10 money-winning clubs.
Well, with me now, Tim Hutchings and Carl Thackeray, who both take a very nice cheque home with them tonight. Tim, a good performance for you. You look very sharp.
Yes, that's right. I think I've stayed away from the earlier races in this series and been putting in a lot of track work and 1 or 2 track races, whereas some of these lads possibly haven't even raced on the track yet, and it's hardly surprising that I'm a bit more comfortable at that sort of pace than they are.
Makes up for you in some way for the disappointment of the World Cross Country Championships.
To an extent, yes. It's very hard to make amends for failing in a big international race like that, but certainly today's race sort of augurs well for the rest of the summer.
Do you think the factor really that enabled you to win was the fact that you hadn't really taken part in the other races in the series? You were still fresh?
To an extent, yes. It's not just the 2 earlier races in this series, but the fact that perhaps they were on top of a whole load of other races. And I think if you do a lot of road racing in a short period of time, then inevitably your performances start going downhill towards the end. And coming in at the end of the series like this just for 1 race, you're bound to feel fresh and strong. And, you know, I was lucky enough for things to go right today.
Well, a gutsy run by this fella, Carl. You did what you had to do, but at the end you looked mighty relieved to see the finishing line.
Oh, that's right. I'm very pleased with the run. I mean, the second to the last lap, I heard that Dave Lewis had moved to 3rd place, and Dave Clark had moved to 3rd place, and I was just sort of pushing on the last lap, and we're glad to get to the end.
Did you think he was going to catch you?
No, not in a way, but it just makes you run faster when you hear it.
Smashing performance by both of you anyway,
Thank
thanks.
you.
And as ever, we've got to let a Welshman have the final word. He would have done anyway. Lynn Davis. Lynn, a great day for Cardiff. Again, perhaps the weather hasn't been perfect, but the course and the turnout of spectators, terrific day.
Indeed, Alan. It's been a great day for, the family, and it's been a great day for top-class athletics. We saw people enjoy themselves running a 3-kilometre, then a 5-kilometre and a fun run. And then we saw, Tim and Kirsty Wade in top-class form. And both of them look well on course for, Kirsty defending her 800-metre title in the Commonwealth Games in Edinburgh. And Tim, of course, is going to look pretty impressive in Edinburgh and in the European Championships this year. So altogether, a great day for Cardiff and a great day for athletics.
Can't claim Tim as a Welshman, though. Anyway, that has been the end of a very entertaining series, I'm sure you'll agree. And we can look forward now to our next athletics here on Channel 4. And that comes up on Tuesday night at 6:30, when we'll have exclusive coverage of the Bruce Jenner Classic from America. Look out here for the surprise defeat of Carl Lewis by Ben Johnson. Following that, on Friday night at 9 o'clock, highlights of the first day of the Women's 3A's Championships. That's the selection meeting for the Commonwealth Games. And in attendance here, Her Royal Highness Princess Anne. So, with our final congratulations to the Grand Prix winners, Gillian Dainty and Carl Thackeray, we'll say goodbye from Cardiff.